Hello and welcome back to the channel, and the topic of the Northern Ireland Protocol is back in the news and back on the agenda. Now it is obvious why this is the case. This is because the UK government has gone very quietly on Northern Ireland Protocol recently, and that is because things were quietly being dealt with behind the scenes, but also because the UK government has been completely distracted by scandals. This obviously does not suit a certain element in Northern Ireland who want this back on the agenda. And so, as inevitably happens when you ignore something, somebody else will try and take control, will try and force the pace, and will try and force the agenda. So, we are back to the Northern Ireland Protocol. I am the collaborative negotiator. I am a professional negotiator of over 10 years experience, and I use this channel to talk about negotiation issues. And this is a classic example of one of the most important things that I teach people. So I am going to talk about that in this video. I'm going to try and avoid too much delving into Northern Ireland politics, which is complicated, messy. Indisputably, there are bad behaviours, there are political agendas going on here. But that is not what I want to focus on. And what I do want to focus on is why are we in this mess in the first place? Why has this problem not been solved? How did we get here? And that is the topic of this video. But to start with, I'm going to go through a little bit of quick context from a negotiation perspective, which is, for those that remember, originally Theresa May was Prime Minister, and she was trying to negotiate the backstop to the withdrawal agreement with the EU to deal with this particular problem. She failed to do so, and as a consequence, she was removed from power, and so the Boris Johnson took over. And what he did at that point is he replaced the backstop with the Northern Ireland Protocol, and Lord Frost negotiated that with the EU. However, it wasn't what you might call a full replacement. It was a pretend replacement. And this was deliberate. This was deliberately done to disguise the fact that not actually that much has changed. And the reason for that is that Boris Johnson couldn't get the withdrawal agreement approved in Parliament. He didn't have the majority, he didn't have the power. So he needed to do a switch and bait. And that is what he did. That is what the Northern Ireland Protocol is in terms of addressing the issues. It is a switch and bait. So what crucially it means is that this Northern Ireland Protocol was not debated, it was not scrutinised, and the crucial phrase that I tend to use is it didn't secure buy-in or consensus. And I will talk a bit more about that as we go along. So this is the thing to remember, that the Northern Ireland Protocol was agreed to meet an arbitrary deadline. Boris Johnson wanted to withdraw from the EU by a specific date. This was his last stumbling block, and rather than going through all the issues in detail, as Theresa May had been trying to do, he just dragged it up. Or perhaps to use an American phrase, he put fresh lipstick on a pig. So that is the context for the Northern Ireland Protocol and why we are here today. So, what's the key lesson from this? As I always teach people, the one thing that will fatally trip you up in any negotiation is stakeholder management, poor stakeholder management. And you can see, I see this mistake time and time again. And the reason why it occurs is because people are under pressure to meet deadlines, to try and get things agreed, try and get certain milestones or objectives achieved. And what that means is they try and take shortcuts. And sometimes you can get away with it for a short period of time. And this is what Boris Johnson did. He shortcut the whole process, and so he then got the withdrawal agreement ratified and agreed through Parliament. And I see lots of people do very similar sorts of things. So if someone refuses to agree to what it is that they want to progress, they will cut them out, if you like, of the scrutiny process for that agreement, whatever the deal is that they're trying to do. So as a consequence, they have not engaged with that stakeholder. And as an actual consequence, they might get the deal signed, but those issues, the underlying issues that should have been addressed before signature, were not addressed. And what that means for many people, in my experience, is that that issue that they failed to address through proper stakeholder management will come back to bite them later on. So here we are with the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is a classic example, and Brexit provide many of these wonderful examples, as people who follow my channel know, of bad practice, of things that were done so badly that they were inevitable consequences to it. So let's talk a little bit about the stakeholders. What is stakeholder management in this context of the Northern Ireland Protocol? Well, the obvious stakeholder that UK government had to deal with would be the EU. And this is primarily what this is about. This is about trying to get Brexit over the line. It was trying to get various agreements negotiated and signed. Now, actually, ironically enough, the EU is the one stakeholder that is satisfied with the Northern Ireland Protocol. They did a lot of analysis on this issue, and for them it was actually quite a significant compromise. What people need to remember about the Northern Ireland Protocol is that it actually, I wouldn't go so far as to say break EU single market rules, but it definitely relaxes what are a whole host of normal international standards and rules. So the EU has compromised and said we will not implement what are normal international standards because that is important for Northern Ireland and the Good Friday Agreement. That is what they've done. And some people have, whether accurately or inaccurately, said that this has created holes in the single market, a Northern Ireland shaped hole by which goods that shouldn't go into the single market can go into the single market. And the EU have done so knowingly and as a compromise. And they've been successful in achieving that compromise within the EU. All the EU members have been willing to agree to that. So ironically enough, this is the one stakeholder that has gone well, and I can't give any credit to the UK government for that. That obviously has to go to the EU negotiators, and this time led by Barnier, who, as my previous videos have highlighted, was an absolutely exceptional stakeholder manager. Did exceptional stakeholder management. So we can see that there's no controversy in the EU. They are happy with the Northern Ireland Protocol. Let's talk about the UK Parliament. They were shut out of debate. This was rammed through at an extraordinarily short speed, at a fast pace. They didn't get to scrutinise the legislation. They didn't get to understand the legislation. So the only people that were satisfied here were those that strongly wanted Brexit and wanted that achieved by a certain timeline. So for political expediency, they were happy with the Northern Ireland Protocol. However, nobody else, whether in the opposition parties, whether even in the Northern Ireland part that represents the UK Parliament in the House of Westminster, they didn't get to scrutinise, they didn't get to have their objections heard. So, and they failed to do it. They failed to do the due diligence. They failed to hold Johnson to account for what he had done. So that is that part of the stakeholder management. Now we talk about the Northern Ireland Parliament. And we should talk about the Northern Ireland Parliament because at the end of the day, this affects them. Now, I don't have any insider knowledge as to how much they were involved in the Brexit negotiation, particularly of the Northern Ireland Protocol, but I definitely get the impression that it was not very much. At no point, as I'm aware, was the protocol presented to them for a vote. They didn't get a vote in it. They were just told, you're part of the UK, we're having Brexit, you will just have to lump what it is the UK government agrees to with the EU, albeit their views would be taken into account, sort of. So they were not adequately managed as a stakeholder or consulted. We then have the unionists. As we all know, the unionists massively dislike the Northern Ireland Protocol. They were not consulted, they were not engaged, essentially they were ignored. And Johnson did that deliberately because he didn't want them holding up him getting the withdrawal agreement over the line. So that is your crucial point of failure. Now, I know various people will point out that some of what the unionists want is unrealistic, and they may not be incorrect in that statement. However, this is the important point. When you're dealing with issues like this, and you're dealing with people, particularly if they're not willing to compromise, you have to resolve that issue with them. You have to find a way of getting some kind of agreement from them. It may be begrudging, they may not be fully happy, but you want to get some kind of agreement, and you want to get that agreement in writing so they can't backtrack on you later. No doubt Lord Frost, Boris Johnson, did not do this at all. And at this point, the unions are now in a position where they see this as a red line, they see the UK government doing nothing about it, and they will take their own unilateral action to force the issue, with various interesting consequences. So we talk about the nationalists. That's another opposite group of stakeholders to the unionists. And ironically enough, they've actually been quite happy, I think, with the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's not perfect, they have their own issues with it. And although they were equally not properly consulted as unionists, because of all the work that the EU did in terms of stakeholder management, their interests have been better represented, better protected, perhaps, arguably, what they see as their red line issues. Have they been more compromising than the unionists? I can't say. I do slightly get the impression that they have. So, but the important point here, the UK government did not consult them either. Nor did the UK government consult the people of Northern Ireland. And this has kind of been very much overlooked in the current news and political conversation. But you shouldn't overlook this. At the end of the day, the vast majority of Northern Ireland didn't even vote for Brexit. They voted to remain in the EU. They certainly didn't get a vote or a say in the Northern Ireland Protocol. So they were just sort of dragged along again without consultation. And the final group of stakeholders, possibly not the most important, I have to say, but worth mentioning anyway, is the United States and the Republic of Ireland. They all have a vested interest. And they have a vested interest because they are key instruments when it comes to the Good Friday Agreement. They're heavily involved, they have a significant interest, and they want things to go well, to put it in a nutshell. So again, I do not know how much consultation there was, but I am fairly confident in saying that Boris Johnson didn't really engage with these stakeholders significantly either. So what are the consequences of all this? Well, the consequences are further erosion in the UK government, if such a thing is possible, but it does seem to be possible. They have completely and utterly screwed over their own communities in favour of other communities. So let's say the people of Northern Ireland versus those who supported Brexit. They favoured the Brexiteers. And whilst that can be appealing from a political expediency point of view, for something as so fundamentally complicated and difficult as Northern Ireland and the Good Friday Agreement, I cannot describe this as anything other than totally reckless. Boris Johnson was utterly reckless in refusing to do stakeholder management. He has created this problem. And it was going to come back. It was just a matter of time. And he did so for political expediency, to get political power, to get the withdrawal agreement through, to deliver Brexit. So what does this mean? This means that we are now in a position where that shortcut, that desire for expediency, that self-entitlement, whatever you want to call it, has created a threat to the Good Friday Agreement. It is a threat to the hard-won peace of Northern Ireland. And it's hard to describe just the sheer idiocy of this. This is what stakeholder management is about. You identify these issues and you protect your core red lines. And sure, and certainly for the EU, we can see that they identified this threat and they've done a whole host of things to try and mitigate it. In complete contrast the UK government has ignored the threat and actually carried out various activities or various poor consultations, stakeholder management and so on, that actually worsens the situation. And this has implications. I've spoken before about the implications of Brexit on the Union and the way it will create political disenfranchisement. And for Northern Ireland, we can see all of that. And it's a tricky situation. I said I wouldn't talk too much about the politics of Northern Ireland, but you have various groups of people who it is exceedingly difficult to get a compromise from. They don't like to compromise. They have certain issues, whether you believe in it, whether you think they're completely barking, is a little bit irrelevant here. As a negotiator, you have to find a middle way. You have to find a way that even if people might not be fully happy, they can at least be on board with it. And that was never done. And that failure is why this Northern Ireland Protocol just won't go away and why it is back. Now, I hope the situation will be remedied, but right now I've seen nothing from the UK government that shows they understand the situation, that are even willing to pay attention. They've got far too many problems already as it is, and they're too distracted, too disorganised. And what does this mean for Northern Ireland? Well, there are more qualified people than I to comment on that, but I think the prognosis is that this is not good. So, yet again, we're talking about Brexit, and yet again we talk about a classic example of a massive negotiation failure. So I hope you found this interesting. For anyone who is conducting any negotiation, I would say please look at this, please learn from it, and please understand that whatever it is you do, get the stakeholder management right. Otherwise, you end up in this sort of situation for whatever deal it is you're trying to negotiate. Thank you very much for listening. Please do like and subscribe if you found this video interesting, and I look forward to seeing the comments in the comment box below.